watching Rogers TV.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Out of the Fog. I'm your host, Laurabel, and on today's episode, I am joined by Tiffany Elton, who is the owner and operator of Dear Dawcy and Ritual Botanicals. After that, we get the chance to chat with Glynn, who is the executive director of Lifewise. So sit back, relax, and we'll get right to the show. Welcome back, everyone. I'm now joined by Tiffany Elton, who is the owner and operator of Dear Dawcy and Ritual Botanicals. Tiffany, thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So you have cool things. I think, let's just start it off from the beginning. You have super cool things. And so for our guests and viewers who don't know what Ritual Botanicals are or Dear Dawcy, how did you combine this wonderful fragrance and botanical line and also have a jewelry company? Because that's a lot.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So what was it for you?
Well, I love making things.
Okay.
And my goal was to just be able to sustain myself by making things I love. And I wanted these products, so it's a little bit selfish.
That's okay. No judgment.
And I wanted natural products. And I started in fashion design in Montreal.
Okay.
I went to fashion school about 23 years ago. I had a store in Montreal.
Wow.
And I had 38 local designers there, so local's always been important to me.
Okay.
Producing locally was always important to me. So I moved home about 8 years ago.
Okay.
And I started with jewelry at the markets.
Okay.
So I was doing the St. John's Farmers Market, the Some Good Market. I was driving out to Brigus with just a few pieces of jewelry that I'd made.
Yeah.
And I was making jewelry before, as well as clothing, but I could start jewelry right away here.
Okay.
So I started making jewelry, people liked it.
Yeah.
And then I started doing night markets, and the girl who's doing night markets said, why don't you join me at Posey Row? Posey Row is like a heritage building downtown,
Yes.
and they rent out different rooms to little shops.
Yeah.
So I joined her there, and then she went on to leave, working in film, doing costumes, and then I had to fill up the store. So I was making beauty products and candles for myself because I like natural products. I like perfume. I like natural incense. I like using rituals for self-care.
Okay.
So I started making those products, and then everybody liked those. So I just made more, and now I'm 6 years in, so the store is full.
Of great things.
Yeah.
So for you, the jewelry started first, and your jewelry is not only super high fashion, but super eclectic and whimsical at the same time. So what's the inspiration behind them? Because you're wearing some and it is stunning. And for the viewers who are looking, these pieces are so well crafted and they're so individual. The kind of person who's wearing your jewelry and they have taste. So what is it for you that comes to crafting these? I
make things I like and I want. And I'm really inspired by the folklore of Newfoundland. There's mermaids on the logo.
Yes.
I use labradorite, a local stone. I like the moon. I follow the moon phases. Anything nature. So I'm inspired by nature. Sort of the cosmic metaphysical realm, folklore. So I just make things that I like and I want to wear.
Okay.
And sometimes, a lot of them are one of a kind. I only make one.
Yeah.
It just depends. So it's just the creative flow. I get in the creative flow, I start making things, and then I'll be surprised sometimes what comes out.
Okay, so it's not that you've sat there and been this is a plan, I have to make these many pieces.
Yeah.
It's I feel like this, and this is what's going to come out of it, and it's going to be beautiful because that's the energy I'm putting into it.
Yeah, I light my incense, I listen to good music, I sit there and make stuff.
Okay.
Just whatever comes to mind. And sometimes I'm very surprised what comes out.
Okay. Before we go into Ritual Botanicals, we're going to talk about the name Dear Dawcy.
Yeah.
Because that is a standout name. So how did you come up with that name?
It was my great-grandmother's name, my great-grandmother. But I spelled it wrong. So my grandmother came into the store and I had all the print stuff printed. And she said, no, sweetheart, that wasn't her name. It was Dawcy, D-O-S-S-I-E, short for Dorothy, not D-A-W-C-Y, but it was too late. I already had everything printed. And I like that spelling, so I just stuck with it.
So grandma's changing her name.
Yeah. And it was, and the dear part is like a letter to the women who came before me. Oh. So it's like, we're doing okay. We're primarily female family. Yeah. And empowering myself was important to me. And I just wanted to, like a letter, like to the women who came before.
Oh my goodness. And like all I can think is like to the women who came after, this is the letter that they get to read. So in your jewelry, you're kind of keeping that going. So that's okay. Super cool. Super emotional. Yeah. Like, we're gonna take a second and just like read that in. Yeah. Okay. So like shifting gears, we're going to go into Ritual Botanicals. So you started that not for people. That was for you at home, your own thing for yourself.
Yes.
And then as the space opened up in Posey Row, it expanded into the store. And so when you came in, you were like pulling all your stuff out, and then I got to smell one of your perfume oils from your Empower line. And I know we don't have smell-o-vision yet because science has not moved in that direction, but for those who don't know, this one smells amazing. So if you smell me later today, I smell really great, and it's all because of Tiffany. So thank you and thank her. But what goes into crafting your line? And it's not just one line, you have different themes within your line. So can you tell me all about that?
Ritual Botanicals, it's based on botanicals, so it's using the power of the botanical in each collection. So I have about 18 different collections in the store. They all have a candle, an oil, a natural incense, and a spray, which doubles as a hairspray and a room spray. And I don't like having a lot of products on my vanity, so I try to put many products in one and then make it look good, so it looks good on your table. But this line is the Empower line. Yeah. It's part of a series of 5. So they were intentions I wanted to set personally in my life. Okay. So like I want it more calm. I want it to be empowered. I wanted to banish things that no longer served me. I want it to celebrate love. And then I want it to heal as well. So there's 5. So the botanicals represent the function. So you could actually set an affirmation while you're burning your candle with your oil on and spray your spray and burn your incense. And then you can set an intention, I am empowered, I am empowering. So that was the idea behind this particular collection. Yeah. And then I have other collections as well in the store based on different botanicals. So it's the botanical that is the star of each collection and the smell. Yeah. Foremost.
See, all I'm thinking right now is like when you said this was a ritual of self-care for yourself. So like you light your incense and you light your candle, you're getting ready either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. Yeah. And this is a whole moment of, like when we think of self-care, we think of it as this elaborate thing, but it can be this little moments of time that we use for ourselves, and we go out into the world with the intention set with this kind of product.
Yeah, and for me, making jewelry is also a ritual for self-care because you get in this flow state, like it's a meditation when you're making stuff. So I'm lighting the incense, I'm smelling the smell, and like scientifically it's said that it helps your neural pathways fire and wire together, like those sort of things. So it's just little rituals for self-care. So that's why it's called rituals or Ritual Botanicals.
Okay. Yeah. So our viewers are now, they're hooked. They want to know where they're going. Posey Row, where exactly is it? Because for those who maybe don't know where Posey Row is located, where do they find you?
Posey Row has been around since the 90s, and they're a beautiful store on Duckworth Street. It's 214 Duckworth Street. It's across from the War Memorial. Okay. It's a heritage building built in, I think it was built in like 1882. Oh, wow. But the owner decided to rent out some of the rooms above their store as little shops. So my room was on the 3rd floor. Okay. It's like a little mini intimate store in an old, it's like a bedroom. It was a bedroom. Okay. So it's a very cute little shop. Awesome. So that's where I am.
Okay, and what hours, if we're wandering downtown on a lovely Saturday afternoon, can we find you?
Yes. I'm open Thursday till Sundays, 12 till 6. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, yeah, and you can also reach me online.
Okay,
yeah, I have a
perfect.
little web store too.
Okay.
So that would be deardawcy.com.
Okay, so your online game one is fantastic. If you are scrolling through social media, make sure to follow Dear Dawcy. They have great online visuals. Like, you see the creativity that goes into her products until you get the chance to meet Tiffany, and then see the creativity that goes into her products. She's fantastic. So one of the things that I ask our guests while they're visiting is, one, was this where you saw yourself?
No, like, I didn't know where I would end up.
Yeah.
It sort of took a lot of twists and turns and pivots. There was a lot of, I started in the fashion, well, I started as a hairstylist.
Okay.
I worked for a Nevada salon.
Okay.
Then I did fashion school in Montreal, and I had a store with 38 local designers. I made my own clothing and jewelry there. But I burnt out. I burnt out because I was open 7 days a week.
Oh, wow.
I ended up moving home. I had a niece born, Bella, with major medical issues.
Yeah.
So I thought I need to move home and be with my family now, because I was in Montreal for 15 years. So I moved home, and I really didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew that healing was foremost in what I wanted to do, de-stressing. I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Then I knew I wanted my creativity back. So it took a little while for my creativity to come back. But it was through doing these things, these little rituals. And then when I made one pair of earrings, it turned into another pair, and then another pair. And then as I started doing the markets and people started liking it, it gave me the confidence to keep going. So I kept doing it, and then until I met my friend who asked me to join her in Posey Row. And it just happened. It just happened. I don't know how.
But it did.
Yeah, and I just kept going with it. And like, our opening party was supposed to be during the pandemic.
Yeah.
We had to cancel the opening party due to the pandemic. So it was just pivoting.
Okay.
Just constant pivoting. But my main focus has always been making things that I want and enjoy and are in line with, like, getting in that flow state and making things. That's all I wanted to do. Yeah.
So if there's a young designer who is inspired by you, if you could tell them one thing in 1 minute, what would it be?
A young designer, well, I mean, that sounds cliche to say just do it. Like,
No, that's not cliche, but if it is.
Yeah. No, I just do it. Like, just do whatever you want to do. Don't question it. Let it just come out of you. Like, and then keep going. I mean, there's always doubts, when business is slow or this or that, or there's always going to be self-doubt in anything you do in life. Just move with it. Just let it happen, feel it, move on and keep going. Just keep doing it. Yeah.
Tiff, you are so cool and so much fun and such a great energy to be around. And it's not just encapsulated in being around you, but in the things that you create. So I want to thank you for taking the time to sit with me and share all the beauty and empoweringness that is you. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for supporting local.
Oh my gosh, all the time.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. I'm now joined by Brad Glynn, who is the Executive Director of Lifewise. Brad, thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Laurabel.
So, it's winter.
It is.
The time has come. The sun is not shining as much, which unfortunately for a lot of people means our mental health is not doing as great. We are doing the holiday hustle. We are prepping for the deepest and darkest months of the year for the next little bit. So what can we do to keep that little bit of serotonin and dopamine that we still have where it needs to be for the next little bit?
That's a big question, Laurabel. You know, at Lifewise, we're a lived and living experience organization, which means all of our staff has their own lived experience with mental health issues, mental illness, substance use, addiction issues. So we're well versed in kind of having these conversations for those of us who may struggle a little more with them. And when I think about it, I think the first thing we need to do is to lean into those things that bring us joy and happiness. It is a bit of a doldrum time of year. You know, woke up 7:30, dark, going to go home from work 4 o'clock, dark. So finding those things that bring that light to your life is really important. I also think a really important thing as we have the coming of winter with the coming of the holiday season is it can be a bit of a should time of year, right? I should do this, I should do that, and being understanding with ourselves that, you know, we just had 30 straight days of rain in November. And that, you know, the shoulds aren't going to do anything for us. It's great to be motivated, it's great to push ourselves to enjoy the holiday season if we like to do that, but shoulding ourselves and putting these expectations on ourselves is setting ourselves up just to feel disappointed, to feel like we're not doing enough, to feel like we're not being what we should be for ourselves and for other people around us.
So and I know for a lot of people, sometimes the holiday season isn't all joy and family and all of that. And then as we are into January and beginning to push through that, some people are dealing with burnout because they pushed far more than they had capacity during that time. What are ways that people can, I guess, build back from burnout? Because we're seeing burnout for a lot of folks. 2024 was not the year some people thought it would be, and it was a lot rougher than others were expecting, with cost of living expenses, weather not always being what we thought it would be, and life just lifing.
Yeah, I think right now we know there's a lot of stressors, you know. It feels like that after impact of the pandemic is never going to normalize to what we thought it would. We also know the impact of inflation, cost of living pressures, you know, the Canada Post strike right now adding extra stress to the holiday season that I think, first of all, you know, setting strong boundaries for ourselves with the people in our lives who we love, with those people that we probably have to interact with throughout the holiday season, who maybe we don't love so much, but it's part of life, and also boundaries with ourselves. We generally know what our social battery is capable of. We know what our battery for pushing is, and maybe setting that a little tighter than you think you need to. So if you set it at a certain point, maybe bring it back even a little more, because the best way to protect from burnout is to prevent burnout. And if we get to a point where there is burnout, you know, leaning into those social supports that we have, leaning into people who, you know, fill our buckets, to use the colloquialism, and to also know if we need a little extra support that they're out there. You know, our warm line receives lots of calls for people struggling with these sorts of issues. You know, the Doorways locations across the province are there. 811 can give you resources, and finding ways to support ourselves through burnout and stopping when we know we need to stop, right? You're not going to be able to push through once that burnout point hits. And the quicker you push those brakes, the quicker you're going to be able to restart in a way that's effective and safe for you, really, frankly.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I've also noticed this year is people trying to make self-care not be this extravagant thing. That, like, yes, I'm a big fan of the bubble baths, the candle, the locking yourself away for multiple hours and saying it's going to be okay. But what are some real practical everyday ways that you and like your team have found that people be able to build self-care into the daily lives?
Yeah, it's really funny. I think, like many words, self-care kind of became part of the world during pandemic times, and when that happens, it kind of loses meaning and gets decontextualized, and there's a certain privilege to a word like self-care.
Yes, there is.
And I think it's really important to remember that self-care is just about you, and not listening to those shoulds from other people, that it needs to be a bubble bath, it needs to be a walk. Really, self-care is about how am I being regenerative for myself and restorative for myself, you know? So self-care for someone might be reading a book. Self-care for someone else might be leaning into work a little bit more and not allowing people to tell you that that can't be self-care. And self-care may be for some people indulging in those sweets, those foods that we like to eat, or it may be eating a really, really nutritious, nutrient-filled diet. So understanding that self-care has kind of become a buzz phrase with certain things attached to it. And ultimately, it's not that. Self-care is, how do I restore myself, and how do I bring myself back to a level place so I'm not too high or too low, that I'm able to, you know, face my everyday life with balance.
So I'm gonna take a little bit step back into what Lifewise is and basically the pillar in the community that you guys have kind of become. So for viewers who maybe have not had the opportunity to be in contact with Lifewise, what can they expect Lifewise to be if should they ever reach out?
Oh, so Lifewise is an entirely lived experience organization. So the first thing you can expect is someone who gets it, because we're speaking from our own experience. With that, our mission is to increase hope and reduce stigma. We have staff from St. John's all the way to Happy Valley Goose Bay working in, proactive and preventative mental health supports, all the way to inpatient settings, substance use teams like the harm reduction team or the opioid dependency treatment team. And what you're going to encounter is our main service is peer support, and through peer support, it's a non-clinical, low-level mental health and addiction intervention where you're basically chatting with someone who's been there, who has a story similar to yours. They're not going to advise you. They're not going to tell you what you should do. They're going to probably ask some really strong questions. They're going to offer you some really active listening, and they're maybe going to tell you some things that have worked for them. And take from that what you want and leave from that what you don't want. And we're going to have about 25,000 peer support interactions this year, which is just a fantastic number, which shows that we've got lots of new people who come to use our services, and we've got lots of individuals who rely on them. In addition, we do offer some public education and community engagement sessions, mental health first aid, suicide intervention trainings, mental health in the workplace. We've got a secondary injury training that's about burnout, that's about compassion fatigue and those things. And at the heart of it all is the fact that you are receiving it from people who've been there and understand it, who've had some of the lowest of the lows, who've maybe lost relationships, lost jobs, made those life choices that they're a little bit embarrassed about, and those sorts of things, which you don't always get. I always say Newfoundland and Labrador's got a real should culture, and that's great because we're trying to help each other. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just don't want that extra, oh, you should do that. You want someone who's going to listen and empathize and truly understand where you've been because they've been there too.
Absolutely. So you touched on something that I find really interesting, where it's that compassion fatigue and for individuals who are caregivers. Do you mind explaining that a little bit? Because there might be people who might be suffering from that but not have the name to put on it.
Yeah, so for sure, right? Anyone in a helping profession or anyone who's just supporting other individuals, parents, grandparents, caregivers, someone dealing with an elderly relative, anyone who's in a position where they're offering primary type supports to another human being, whether that's paid or in the course of their day-to-day life, is at a higher risk for compassion fatigue. And that's where you're encountering difficult situations. You're dealing with someone who's maybe a little jaded, maybe experiencing difficulty and not bringing their best self to you. And eventually you run out of the ability to empathize with that. Lack of empathy, lack of motivation are often kind of warning signs for compassion fatigue. And at that moment in time, you're not going to be able to engage that individual or individuals you're dealing with effectively, and also the other people in your life are going to start feeling this shortness, stepping back from things, not finding joy in your life. And obviously you can hear, in this, the holiday season could certainly be a cause of that, because if you're in a helping profession, you're probably supporting other people getting ready for the holiday season. You're probably having increased demand from people who you're supporting. And compassion fatigue is a really real thing, and we see it in first responder fields, we see it in educators, but any one of us who's really working in a situation or living in a situation where we're a primary support for someone is really at risk for it, and this time of year it can certainly be exacerbated. So finding ways to step back, to find the joy in the work you're doing, and finding others who can support you in that is really, really important to protect from it.
So I only have you for a few more minutes, and you and I have had many a chat about mental health and mental wellness and what that can look like for individuals. And a lot of what Lifewise does is to reduce the stigma, if not completely break the stigma. Yeah. And so for viewers who are watching who are still dealing with a little bit of the shame surrounding not having what's dictated as optimal mental health and wellness,
for sure.
What is one thing you would like to say to them, so knowing that this is their one chance, one-on-one with Brad? What would you want them to know?
A couple things. I think one of the first things is that we say 1 in 5 Canadians in a year struggles with a mental illness or a substance use issue. There's some numbers that suggest up to 50% of the population by the age of 50 has lived with a mental health issue, a mental illness, or a substance use or addiction issue. Since the pandemic, we've seen a 3-time increase in people in Canada who rate their mental health as fair or poor. So the biggest piece is you're not alone. we're out there. If you're in a room with 20 people and you're like, oh my God, I'm the only person who's miserable right now, I'm the only person struggling. No, most likely there's at least 9 other people in that space who've been there. And that can break the stigma in itself, because it reminds you of that. If it's something more complex, if it's an illness that's impacting your ability to work, if it's alcohol use disorder that's taking joy out of your life and causing impacts, if it's a substance use disorder that's stigmatized even more, you know, finding people like peer supporters who can say we've been there is really, really helpful. And I think the first step is realizing I can share my story with someone else, and finding a safe person in your life, whether that's a loved one, whether that's a clinical professional, whether that's a doctor, whether that's a teacher, whether that's whatever safe person it is, to go, I'm struggling right now. I think to my own journey, when I first did that, I was really lucky. I was 16 years old and my parents saw me struggling and asked if I needed to see someone. I said no and ran in the other direction for 15 years. But then when I went to seek help again, I was able to go, wait, my parents told me this was okay. And then I went to a safe friend and said, I need to call someone. And then I called a professional, and it's led me on a 10-year journey where I still struggle and I still have some of the days that are the lowest of the low, but I know I'm not alone in that. And that first conversation is going to be the hardest one. That second one's going to be a little easier. And ultimately, it's finding those safe people who lift you up and say, it's okay, we love you not despite these struggles. We love you and we love these struggles that you're going through.
You and I could spend all day chatting about this.
Yeah.
So can you let people know a little bit one more time, Lifewise, when people can reach out?
Absolutely. So we've got a whole suite of services, particularly our peer support services, but you can always reach out to our provincial warm line, 1-855-753-2560. 365 days of the year from 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. You can leave a message if you call outside of times, and you can either find someone to speak to there, or you'll connect with someone who can direct you somewhere you want. And again, it doesn't just have to be for mental health or mental illness or addiction issues. The number 2 reason people call our line is loneliness and isolation. So even if you just need someone to speak to, that's going to help your mental health anyway.
Brad, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Laurabel.
And we'll be right back, everyone.
Your opinion matters, and we want to hear from you. Get in touch with us using our viewer feedback line, your direct connection to shaping the shows you love. It's easy. Just grab your phone, scan the QR code on your screen, and take our quick survey. Share your thoughts, and let's make your viewing experience even better.
I want to give a very special thank you to all of you for tuning in yet again. It is always a pleasure to share time and space with you. I want to give a very special thank you to my guests. I want to give Tiffany a thank you for showing us how for her self-care leads to beautiful jewelry and fantastic smelling botanicals and ritual care. And I want to give a very special thank you to Brad of Lifewise for showing us that self-care can be fit into our little days and is based on who we are as individuals, and letting us know that it's okay when we're not okay, and that we are not alone if our mental health isn't great. If you are struggling at any point, please feel free to reach out to Lifewise. There are peer supporters on staff ready to help you. And I can't wait to see you all again next time.
This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
We want to hear from you. Provide feedback on this show or find out how you can get involved. Call, email us, or scan the QR code to take our quick survey.
For me, it all started here.
I do my best work here.
Scores! Oh my goodness! This guy's dangerous from here, here, and here.
We're watching history in the making here.
Are you watching this?
And our fans are up here.
I'm here for it. It's all about what's up here and what's in here.
Sportsnet, here for hockey.
Leonard Thompson, 13 years old, diabetes mellitus, 65 pounds.
Starve the child to let them live. The treatment's as cruel as the disease. It's a death sentence.
Dr. Banting.
This could be it.
He's the first to receive this trial.
But will it save him?
It's not pure enough. So we try again. And again. And again.
Before the discovery of insulin, diabetes was a death sentence. Banting, Best, Collip, and McLeod's breakthrough has saved millions of lives. Leonard Thompson's was the first.